get yourself together. Check 1, 2. Good evening, everybody. It is Divided We Stand, Saturday, the 10th of December, 2022. Good to see everybody, really. Already I've seen a few comments from Veg. Saw your video today. Very, very entertaining. Very, very funny. We got Joey here. We got Nina and probably a host of others. And we have Kim from the great state of Washington. So if you can hear me, make sure that you tell me. I'll wait for a little bit. Are we good? Are we not good? Oh, good. All right, before I begin, I don't want to give any kind of perfunctory word or two about Dave. I'd like to just mention that it's been very, very tough on me not having Dave here. Not only because he's not here and we have that dialogue together, but he's a good friend of mine, as he is of yours. And now it's starting to invade my subconscious. I had a dream about Dave last night, and it's been over 6 months now. So I have great concern about my friend, and one can only hope that he gets better. And that's all that really matters right now, that he gets better. I have no new news for you. If I had good news, I would give it to you. So we continue, nonetheless. The show must go on. And that's what Dave would want anyway. Now, I want to again thank everybody for showing up tonight. If you're new to this channel, this is Divided We Stand on YouTube. We also have Divided We Stand on Facebook. We would appreciate if you would subscribe. We are not monetized. We're not looking for any type of money. We just want to have some commiseration between all of us. This group is set up solely for the purpose of joining like minds who have a definite sense of fear of what could be happening in the future and what has happened so far with the Republican Party. And therefore, we cannot be a united country at this point. And until something changes on that other side, divided we stand. So again, we'd appreciate if you would subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we also again have the Facebook page. It's a Facebook group page. It is a private page, but if you request membership, we'll give it to you as long as you agree to our group rules. So thank you. Thank you very much. Also, a quick shout out because, Vegomatic Deluxe from London, Ontario, said some really nice words again. It's very, very nice of Veg to do that. He doesn't have to do it, but he does it anyway, and he's very complimentary toward this channel. And we're very complimentary toward him. And just a shout out, if anybody has not heard of Vegomatic Deluxe, you should check it out. And that also goes for Sandy with Environmental Coffee House. Sandy walks the walk and talks the talk. great person. So you want to check that channel out. That is also on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube. So I don't know if I can call it sister channels of some sort, but there is a camaraderie between us and something that we believe in. Yeah. All right. We have Gary Peacock. Frida has left Fred the Falcon. Freddie the Falcon. Bowling Green Falcon. Yeah. So, geez, there's so much on my mind this week, folks. And if you've read the title of tonight's show, it talks about the problem with Russia, causing problems in many, many ways with this country, and as well as within the country. And there's so much going on, and I don't even really know where to start. As the week started, I think I was most upset with the Supreme Court, because you know that a few decisions are going to be coming up, especially the one about state legislatures. We also have some type of, I think you may remember this. This was something that was in the news a while back. I will actually show you this briefly. I hadn't intended on showing this today, but I thought it's worth showing. There was a Christian graphic artist who didn't want to have to deal with designing weddings for gay couples, and the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and things just don't look good in that case, and in any of the cases for that matter. And I think my biggest problem earlier this week was just this idea that cemented, it has barraged my brain, that because of the Federalist Society and what's happening with religion within the Supreme Court, things could go disastrously for us in a quick way. And that's even with Biden as president. And I think we got a little taste of that, or a hint, from Kagan. I think it was just not her opinion, but it was rather a subtle warning to us all that, perhaps this thing can get out of hand. And I think that she probably knows it better than any of us could, because she's right there amongst them. So it's absolutely frightening. So there has been a lot going on. Facebook, Divided We Stand, and Twitter. And I do want to show you some various things that people have posted. I think they're important. We do have the case of Brittany Griner being traded for Victor Bout. I think I'll start off there. I've read a few good articles on this case, because, I mean, unless you've been on the planet Mars, you know what has happened. And this has implications, obviously beyond just the trade, has great political implications. And, we've always had this sentiment in the country that you never want to give away too much, because they'll do it again. We've had this discussion before, Bo Bergdahl. We've had many, many trades on bridges where, our guy goes over there and their guy comes over here and they meet. And essentially this happened again. Problem was, we have a terrorist who has helped fuel the killing of Americans, and we have an innocent person, aside from having just a small quantity of vape there, someone who represents, I think, the best in America in a sense. We have a liberal African-American who has, obviously she was put in a penal colony, and she is gay. So this kind of trade creates a lot of problems, because within Russia, we have a society that is unforgiving unforgiving towards LGBTQ rights. Even today, while I was speaking with a woman from St. Petersburg, she's very, very conservative, and we don't really have political conversation, but as the discussion started today, she and a friend of mine from California, who's originally from Poland, they talked about Lavrov, who's kind of like Putin's point man, and she saw him as some kind of, wonderful hero, and she believes that, a man is a man, a woman is a woman. There's no non-binary this or that, and that's how many Russians think. So when we made this trade, as soon as Viktor Bout comes back, he starts off talking about how this godless country in America has 72 genders and we only have 2. In fact, I might be able to pull that up because I believe that was in subtitles, if I can find that. Yeah, I think I'm going to show you that, okay? Now, in this video, you're going to see Maria Butina. She was, if you remember, the one who was jailed. She was the Russian spy who, you can see her pictures with Donnie Jr. and, well, I'll show you those pictures later. But I think we should look at this conversation between Butina and Bout. Again, Bout just arrived 24 hours ago, and he's already starting up again. So let's check it out. Now, if there's any problem with the volume, you'll have to tell me, folks, okay? So I'm going to close off the sound effects, and here we go. Yes, we have the subtitles there for you, so we should be okay. Let me just make sure. All right, so here we go. This is Viktor Bout.
То, что происходит на Западе, это просто самоубийство цивилизации. И если это самоубийство не будет предотвращено, хотя бы на территории не западного мира, да, не того мира, который контролируется англосаксами, то вся планета совершит самоубийство. Понимаете? И это идет, наверное, по всем направлениям. Да? Это и наркотики, это и это, как по-русски говорить, LGBTQ+. Да? Вы представляете, сейчас в американских школах преподают, да, первокурсникам, 6-7-летним первоклассникам, да, что оказывается есть 72 пола. Не просто, например, там такие там геи как бы нормальные, а 72. То, что происходит на Западе.
Okay, so I'm going to first ask you if you were able to hear that at all. Okay, so I may need to work with my settings to make sure that's right. But you know what? It really doesn't matter anyway, as long as you saw the subtitles, because that's all that really matters in this case. Okay, so here we see a situation in which we have Viktor Bout and Maria Butina, two of the people who were sitting in American jails. And if you know anything about the structure of Russia, Putin controls all the media. And that's kind of interesting to think about. I mean, I know that you kind of know this, but where in the world do you see a country in which the leader controls every bit of the media? Controls the press, programming. Who does he decide to put on? He could have put on anybody. He puts on Butina and Bout. Two people who essentially were sitting in the same position. Two very sneaky people too. I mean, essentially they're spies. and they're a tool, well-paid tools for Putin. So it's a propaganda war going on right now, which, if you look at what's happening in this country, I mean, Putin's probably eating it up because he wants to hear the liberals say, this was a horrible deal. I mean, he wants the liberals to say, yes, this was a great deal, and he wants the Republicans, I'm sorry about that, and the Republicans to say this was a horrible deal. He wants that inner conflict, and he's getting it. Because at home, he doesn't have to worry about that, but it's going to look like a victory. So you might be saying, am I agreeing or disagreeing with what happened? Initially, I had the position that perhaps it wasn't such a good decision, but that was the old me in terms of how we used to think in the 60s and the 70s. We don't trade people for terrorists. The old Israeli type of model. And I was very careful the last few days to basically mute that type of thinking, because I have to think it through, because these times have changed, because there's a lot more going on with this, especially since internally we have a problem. Again, we have a problem with Russia. So it's, when I think of it, at least at this point in time, I think it was a good move, because it was a bold move for the president. He got back his people, meaning our people, decent people. Whelan, now I'm not saying we shouldn't bring back Whelan, but Whelan is a Trump supporter, and he should be able to get back, and I think he will come back. There'll be some other deals. But Putin wasn't going to give in. Putin didn't want to lose having 2 for 1, because it was simple math in Russia. We can't give up 2 of ours, or just that kind of thing. So I think Biden did the right thing, but now, of course, he's receiving a lot of criticism, and that we're going to look at from Donnie Jr., who's causing a lot of problems here. Okay, so I'm going to, again, if the volume is a problem, you'll tell me. We'll see. All right, and I think I'm going to be okay with this. So you might hear a little bit of it. Don't worry about it. Okay. So here's the addict.
The Marine, right? He didn't check enough woke boxes, probably. I'll say probably because they'll say, no, that's not accurate. So in my opinion, we didn't get back the guy that was a cop for 15 years that enlisted in the Marines in the mid-90s, that deployed to Iraq in 2004. We didn't get back the American hero. We got Brittany Griner, who hates America because she checks off a bunch of boxes. I think it's crazy, but I do think there's a level of arrogance that probably Brittany Griner had going into Russia, thinking she could get away with these things. Because in America, as a female celebrity, minority, lesbian, she's probably, and can probably felt and probably could actually be above the law, right?
All right, so he's making the accusation because she's black and a lesbian, she can be above the law, which is obviously a projection on his father, because this is what the Republicans are doing, and which, by the way, look at what's on his wall. I mean, that tells you a lot about the person right there. But if you have to stay with me on this, okay? Coked up again. This projection, of saying that Brittany Griner is gay and she's black, so she's going to get away with it. It is projecting the very thing that Trump does. He gets away with things. And this is the same thing actually in Russia. Now, if you hold on for a second, you'll see what I'm saying. We know that the Russians fought the Germans during World War II. They fought the fascists. They fought fascism as we did. But now what they've done is they've tried to make Ukrainians into monsters. And he's calling them fascists and Nazis, which they aren't, but he's doing that. And this is basically what autocrats do. They lie. They lie. And this is, of course, the great harm that we're going to have in this struggle in definitely in the next 2 years. And the struggle's so great because at the top, where the rubber meets the road, you have the Supreme Court. And then you have people like Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Barrett too. So you have these problems. But back to the idea that this is what they do. They project it. They really ignore what they defend, and the opposite. These people will use their own faults and apply them to others. Right? And that's a technique. And it seems to work with the ignorant. So now, across the media, all you see, at least in the right-wing media, is the idea that Biden has given everything away, and then they bring Paul Whelan into this. Now, the interesting thing about Paul Whelan, I would like you to see the comment from the father, which I thought was really, really good. Okay. So this is David Whelan. This is Paul Whelan's father, I believe, or his brother. I don't know. But the real point is what he said. He said, former President Trump appears to have mentioned it's his brother, I'm sorry, there you go. Former President Trump appears to have mentioned my brother Paul Whelan's wrongful detention more in the last 24 hours than he did in the 2 years of his presidency in which Paul was held hostage by Russia. I don't suggest he cares now any more than he did then. Well, that was a good comment. Okay, so, of course, I don't have to convince any of you, but again, this is what people do at that level. They are liars. And, of course, Whelan sees through this, but you know that Trump obviously wasn't helping his brother out at all. Mainly because he's like this with Putin, okay? Which now makes you think, if Trump had won the presidency, Ukraine would have been gone, would have been absolutely gone. And now we have, I guess we have to say that we're kind of lucky that it didn't happen to like the other ones also, like Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, because Russia certainly could have chosen them as a start, but they were, obviously NATO countries now, so they had to be, I guess, more careful. But it certainly could have happened, and it still might happen. It still might happen. Which leads me to a related conversation about these oligarchs, and this will perhaps be of some interest to Sandy's followers. It seems to me over time that it's become evident that the oligarchs, the rich people of the world, most of them, not all of them, most of them are actually for climate change. So much so that they'll lie about certain things. But there can be no greater oligarch in terms of wealth and how he uses fossil fuels to empower himself. And again, we're going to go back to Putin on this. This structure of the Russian economy is based on energy and based specifically on fossil fuels. He himself, as I've said many times in the last 4 or 5 years, has stated that he's not sure if climate change is real, because even if it is real, we don't know whether man has induced climate change. Now, we know that's bullshit, okay? It's the same bullshit that he talks about with Ukraine. He's demonized these people. In fact, getting back to Ukraine, a lot of Russians, a lot of Christian Russians believe that Ukrainians are demonic. Okay? And that's just what's happening right now in Russian society. But again, getting back to Putin as an oligarch, he is an oligarch, in fact, for fossil fuels. And I was just watching Extinction Rebellion today. I was in Salem, New Jersey, and I was just, playing around with my phone. And I was watching something out of Austin, Texas. And I said to my wife, I said, it's wonderful that these young people are protesting. They were protesting some type of coal plant that was near a lake, and it was just using the water as a coolant, and the water was getting polluted. It's one of the 10 worst sites in the country. It's wonderful. But there seems to be no discussion about the main oligarch in the world, who is a fossil fuel oligarch. And that is Putin. And it's my belief that there's not enough pressure from Extinction Rebellion and groups like that. I can't expect Extinction Rebellion to go to Russia. They know they can't even get in there. If they did, they'd be arrested. They'd sit in a penal colony before Brittany Griner did. But they are a major, major problem. And not only are they a major problem in terms of being one of these fossil fuel leaders in the world, they are literally starving people, by taking out, ships and shipments of grains and sunflower oil and those kind of things. It's eco-terrorism. It's eco-terrorism. Ukraine should be producing a lot more grain than they are. They should be exporting a lot more grain. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. I have to be aware of that more. I hear my voice really loudly, and I think that's part of the problem, but thank you. So, yeah, it's eco-terrorism, and if you look at what Putin is doing with the way they are, operating the war in Ukraine, he couldn't care less about the environment. He'll light up the wheat fields if he has to. So, if there's any type of camaraderie, teamwork that must happen within the environmental community, it has to start taking shots at Putin. Because, if you really think about it, if everybody talks about the methane in the East Siberian Sea, that's Russia. But again, many of these oligarchs believe that climate change is okay. For Russia, they actually believe that. Just like they believe that Ukrainians are Nazis and fascists and demonic. And if you think that's wrong and crazy, just look at people in our country like Marjorie Taylor Greene. We'll get to her in a bit too. So there's going to have to be a big struggle here, folks, because as I see it, and as I've always seen it, if democracy doesn't win, environmentally, the planet will not win. This is first and above all a political problem, and it must be solved at a political level. I've said this over and over and over again. It can only be solved politically. It can't be solved by force. You can't use logic. You can talk till your face is blue to a Russian about Ukraine, about climate change. He or she will not believe you. You will not, and she will not believe you. So, if Putin wins in Ukraine, which I don't think he will, but if he does, it would bode very poorly for us in the United States, because we are at that struggle right now. I mean, even just recently, I forget what his name is, Judge Barry or whatever his name was, the Department of Justice was trying to, hold Trump into contempt because he's not giving all these documents back. But Barry says no, his attorneys are making an attempt. Now, I might be out of my lane by saying this judge is wrong, because first of all, I'm not an attorney, but I can observe. This is very inductive for me. I can do that. I can observe what I see in the facts, and it certainly is going through a progression that, even though we have had our victories, we're fighting it. And that brings me back to this next person. Oh, and you all know how I feel about her, but let's just take a look, because we have to. Okay, we have to face these problems, and we have to discuss these problems every time we're here. Similarly, in the Democratic Party. So none of us here were shocked. I don't think any of you out there was shocked about what Kristen Sinema did. She's a liar. She's another liar, and she's no better than an oligarch, because she only seems to care about herself. She knew what was going to happen in 2024. She was going to be primaried, and she was going to lose immediately in the Democratic Party. So it would have looked bad if she jumped to the Republicans, because they could have said, yeah, well, that's what she does anyway. And she holds some power when she caucuses with the Democrats. But she is one who was in the Green Party, and she states that she's doing this, for the people of Arizona, because she said that the Democratic Party is going too far this way. And when asked by Jake Tapper, what specifically do you mean by going too far? And she didn't define anything. She basically said, well, it's their attitude about things. I'm paraphrasing, but she never really defined what it is. Couldn't. I'm kind of glad to see her go. I don't want to see the number change, but this is going to be one hell of a fight. And there's no margin for error right now. So you see just how important this victory by Warnock was. Absolutely important. So, yeah. Let's take a few comments here. I haven't really caught up with this. I did catch Kim's comment about the Mike Greenmeyer. Yeah, right. I mean, that was the interesting thing, too. And, you wouldn't, at least in my opinion, somebody who's part of the Green Party, you'd think that, they're kind of like a Ralph Nader, where he or she would, stick to principle, right? You're going to stick to principle, because you're not going to win an election in the Green Party. But then she starts making her jumps. And by the way, she did mention, I have a video on Facebook where when Joe Lieberman left the Democratic Party, she was all upset and said, how could he do this? Talking about ignoring what you defend. So, yeah, she's about as bad as it gets. She was somebody who saw what Manchin was doing, and she just said, well, if there's one of them, why can't there be two? And he was successful at it, and she brokered things. I mean, I'm sure she got some things for her state, but mainly she got things for herself. And she's a pig. Sorry about that, but that's what it is. Yeah, veg. Veg, again, good to see you. Total sellout, right? And that's hard to take too, because there are some good politicians. You know, I know there are some good politicians out there. AOC brought that up about Sinema being a sellout. Angus King, good guy. Bernie Sanders. You know, these are good people. There are some good people. White House, Sheldon Whitehouse. But when you have these people who are corrupt, and I think that's what we basically see in life in general. We meet people, you know, we have people we meet who are great people, become good friends, and they're honest. And then we have people who just cheat and lie and scheme to get over. And that seems to make everything hard to stomach. Really hard to stomach. So yeah. Karen, good to see you. Yeah, Veg. Doesn't say much for any party she's at. Yeah, well, I don't know what she's going to do now. I mean, being an independent, I mean, she might ruin it for the Democrats, you know, get a three-way race. But I don't think she's going to get many Democratic votes, and I don't think she's going to get many Republican votes unless she runs as a Republican. McConnell has always had good words for her. Elon Musk loves her. So that tells you a little bit about Elon Musk. Here's another oligarch. You know, it's interesting how, you know, Musk, electric cars, things like that, which is kind of ironic because he is a true oligarch type. So I don't know that he'd really care about the plan. In fact, the very fact that he's interested in going to Mars, this idea of, you know, I'll be safe there. No respect for the planet to me. Again, it's all about bucks, says Kim. Yeah, absolutely. It's all about bucks. And I think involved in the bucks, though, I think there is the ego thing. I think some people, like Trump, I mean, he has negative value in terms of money, but he's able to get power, and was able to get power. And just the idea that he's popular, he just thrives on it. If he can't get it, I mean, we all know that. He's a narcissist. So there is a bit of narcissism in this, in addition to the money, right? So it's more than money. It's a deeply embedded psychological narcissism, you know, that would make one lie, that would make one, you know, change their appearance. I'm not saying everybody who changes their appearance is a liar. I'm just saying that a person like Sinema, there's more than just money involved, and it's not good. Whatever case we're looking at, it's not good. She was manipulated and willingly manipulated by Mitch McConnell, and of course the GOP donors. You're absolutely right, Vegematic Deluxe. So it's like Cheeseburger Deluxe. U.S. Defense Contractor would gladly rent such a shield to the... Okay, so I guess you're talking about a shield for Ukraine. You know, the U.S., at least it's been reported, is giving the go-ahead for Ukraine to use drones in Russian territory. Now, I don't know... See, I don't have any problem with it. I mean, they've been invaded, so let them defend themselves. They have the right to defend themselves. I'm just wondering the total effect with Putin. You know, how far does he go? Especially if they keep hitting, and it will look really bad. Again, the Rush, as I've said, you know, 2 weeks ago, I don't think the Russians in general really care whether, in the end, whether they're Nazis they are not. The Russians see it as an Olympic hockey game. They want their team to win. Okay? There's a certain national narcissism going on there. So, how successful will it be, and what will be the response from the Russians? I don't know. Can't wait until she's gone. Now Manchin and Taylor are agreeing to go. Well, Manchin is unlikely to go because of West Virginia. Okay? Richard Ojeda, he's a great West Virginian, but I don't think he can win any election in the Senate. I don't know how you transform a Trumpian society and then all of a sudden make them, oh yeah, you guys are right, he's an asshole, right? It just doesn't change that way. You don't get people switching religions. Oh, I think I'll change. After mom and grandmom and great-grand, that thing gets just pounded in here. You don't change that much. Unless you're lucky enough, like myself, to have parents who, if there's any one great thing they did, is they let me think for myself and not be afraid. Now, getting back to, say, the Russian thing, it'd be the same thing. How are you going to get them to say, oh, yes, we are killing all those people there? And as Timothy Snyder brought up, and this has been brought up on Hal Sparks' show, but I think it relates and it is resourced from Timothy Snyder, that part of this plan by Putin was about demographics, about the fact that, first of all, after World War II, we had a much larger female population in Russia, and the male population was dying off. Then you lost the Soviet Union, population going down, 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 and then males are dying in their 60s. They live 10 years shorter than we do. So he needed to get an instant grab. So he thinks that we can get Ukraine and add those numbers. Well, it turns out, of course, the Ukrainians they're not hip with that. He thought it was going to be easy. But what has happened, as Timothy Snyder has pointed out, is that they have grabbed literally 4 million fertile women. And I don't mean to say it in any kind of crude way, just childbearing year women, and they brought them in to Russia proper. Okay, now, luckily, a lot left, but in eastern Ukraine, they grabbed them. Okay, and he wants to annihilate the male population in Ukraine. He's willing to make them faceless. I mean, the very demonization of the Ukrainians will show you that he is willing to go that far, and he's going to bring the women back, and who knows. But again, he's got a demographics problem too. It's not just geographical, it's demographics. So we're talking about populations and numbers, female, male, that kind of thing. So there's a lot involved in it. And he may believe all the bullshit he says, just like Trump probably believes that he's innocent. Trump probably believes he stole the election, even though he's lying. I know it's weird to think that he could lie at the same time that he actually believes that he won the election. He lies to himself and tells himself that he won the election. And this is what these people do. Again, it goes back to what I said earlier. The oligarchs will lie. They're going to lie. And it seems that the crueler they get, or like the worse things are getting for the Russians in the war there, the more they seem to, coalesce and stand behind them. And this is the kind of shit that's happening here. Again, this is my warning. It's nothing new. It's nothing original. But there's a general sense that you can see, a line developing, a definite line developing to losing democracy. And the biggest problem is that once you lose it, you don't get it back. Or if you do, it's not in your lifetime. You have to have terrible struggles, and there's a lot of suffering and pain that has to go along with it. Why did she get any money from the DS or RS or some other cabal of oligarchs? Will she get any money from the DS or RS? The D's or the R's? Will she get any money from the D's, or some of the cabal politics. Well, she's not going to be tight with the Democrats. The only thing she's going to do is she's going to, again, she'll vote what she thinks she has to vote to stay alive. My guess, this is just my guess, when you get closer to 24, not now, but when you get closer to 24, I think that's when she'll look and see if she can make deals with McConnell, whereas she can run as a Republican in Arizona, because you know that there may be Republicans there ready to run in the Senate there. And of course, by the way, you already have Carly Lake still pulling that shit. And that's another thing, too, that there's this Trumpian idea of let's obstruct in any way possible, and we'll use the legal system to do it. So she's going to challenge the vote in Maricopa County. And, you know, although the election is done, they're still causing problems. You see, and you see where this is going now. It's using the courts, and of course the playbook is running the timeout, and that's a win in itself. Yeah, she would be obliterated in a primary, and she knows it, right? But again, I think she wants to be. I mean, she wants to stay in there. There was a comment, somebody said Biden should have her in the cabinet, and then you have the governor appoint a Democratic senator. Yeah, you could do that, but Sinema would not accept an appointment. No, she wants big. So because she's a narcissist, she'll go for the top, and she will then try to manipulate McConnell, which she may not be able to do, but I think she will try to manipulate McConnell behind the scenes so that somehow the Republican Party will accept her. And then she'll be the biggest douchebag of all, because all the things she was going against, saying, both parties are going too far to the extremes. Yeah, but she'll join the extreme, right? And she'll deal with the extremes. I mean, I would call McConnell an extremist. Oh, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Gil. Volume is too low again. All right. I am so afraid of the volume going too high, too. There, I'll just use my mic there like that. All right. Thank you, Kim. I know I'm a little bit behind. So. Putin allegedly fell down a flight of stairs and shit himself. Yes. And he does have that puffy look. I don't know that I'm that confident that he's on his way out. But a flight of stairs will do things. And we know that happened to Ivana Trump, right? That really is kind of Epsteinish, right? You all agree with me on that? Wish it had been worse, don't we all? Yeah. What happens when he croaks? Well, Medvedev, he's the guy who wants to be president again. You know, he wants that. And there are others. You know, there are others. I mean, even Lavrov, he's a real asshole. And, you know, I could see him becoming president there, and that would be horrible because he's so sneaky. Because he speaks English well. Because then he can try to manipulate the American public if he ever became president again. See, just as a spokesman, so to speak, although Peskov is the spokesman, and I wouldn't see him as president, but Lavrov, is, you know, as foreign minister, so to speak, you know, people know his face. He could cause real problems. Lost in the caps. Where is she going to get her campaign funds? Right. I mean, I think that's a good question. I mean, there's no strong independent, you know, funding going on there, Bark Eater. you could see it being funneled from the Republicans, behind the scenes. That kind of thing will happen. But I think that I don't know. Again, it's probably not my lane to even say this, but my suggestion would be that when push comes to shove, if she wants to survive because she is a narcissist, she'll go wherever she can. Maybe she'll start amping up, right-wing ideology as time goes by, and then all of a sudden take that jump. I can't see her taking the jump that quickly. And because she is bisexual, you would think that it might be tough for her in the Republican Party, the conservative Republican Party. I want to go back to Marjorie Taylor Greene. This was probably the most revolting thing that I've seen, literally from a politician. So let's check this out. Hold on. Make sure it's visible. You're not going to like this.
Joe Biden, you're not a president. You're a piece of shit.
Well, that wasn't loud enough.
Joe Biden, you're not a president. You're a piece of shit.
All right. I think it'd be best if I just said what she said. If you couldn't hear that, she said, Joe Biden, you're not a president. You're a piece of shit. So this is where it's gone. We can just say anything now. It's turned into a Maury Povich show on that side. It's disgusting. All right. Thanks, Bark Eater. I don't know why it's not that loud. I seem to have everything set right. I can't see what's going wrong. And I don't doubt you folks. I mean, I'm sure you're hearing what you're hearing. There was an update with Ecamm, so that it's definitely possible that something has happened. All of my levels are really high here. I just don't know why. Check. I'll move closer, but we may have echo. So, all right. I can't actually hear the background music. I'm going to move ahead here just so you can tell me if you hear an echo. So I'll wait here for a comment. I have to wait like 30 seconds because I think that's how long it takes you to get my feed. You heard it. Okay, so you heard it. Thank you, Karen. Hi, Midas Lisa. All right, yeah. So, as I was saying, what she said there is basically turn this into a Maury Povich show. And it's quite acceptable because the other side is basically accepting of that type of behavior. And we can't be drawn down into that, although I'm certainly capable of doing that. But I think that we're going to have to hold our ground with this, even though we've got this, obnoxious right side. Now, this is the next thing I want to talk about, and that is when you have these Republican committees coming up the next 2 years. I think this is where you're going to see the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Jim Jordans. I don't know if they're going to talk like that, but they're going to have that type of demeanor, and that demeanor is effective with their constituents. And it comes down to, again, people not liking us. And I'll give you an example today. Now, my cousin, who's a Trumper, who didn't believe in COVID, is in a hospital tonight with pneumonia, fluid in his lungs, a fever. He called me up. And he, despite the fact that he's in serious trouble, he brings up Hunter Biden and the laptop. And of course I told him, I said, there's no, as far as I know, there is no laptop. And then he calls my other cousin, who's very angry with me because I'm a liberal. And he tells my cousin, both of them are crazy. He tells my cousin, don't speak to him. Don't speak to Brian. I can't believe you'd even listen to him. You see, and this is where we've transcended. Our whole society has been transcended because, if you have family members who are on the other side, they're as distant as any other enemy. Like, I don't have it in me to speak to either one of them. Now, the one does still speak with me because I think there's some lingering part of him that kind of knows that I'm right. He was always kind of impressed with things I did in my life, and he had a rough time growing up and bad things happened to him. I'm not making excuses for him, but I could understand why he became a Trumper, right? So I don't necessarily get angry with him because of his opinions. I'm able to just look at it and say, he's messed up. But it's the other one who knows better and then just outright says, don't speak with Brian. Why do you speak with him? So as you and I have these discussions here on Divided We Stand, this is the very discussion that my right-wing cousins say, he screwed up. And I've tried to convince them. I've given up. So it comes down to basically, how are we going to win this thing? And I say that it's got to be leverage. It's just like, when people work above you, the only way you can get them to do something is to be able to hold them accountable for something, right? I mean, if somebody is above you, like a supervisor or a boss, there's not a whole hell of a lot that you can do. But if you can get some leverage on him or her, then you might be successful, because that person has a lot more to lose because they're going to be making more money than you are. Or they may be a narcissist in some way and they don't want to be embarrassed. So it's all about leverage. Just like, for example, the Ukrainians, they don't have a larger force than the Russians, but they have the technology and they develop leverage. And they say, now we can defeat you tete-a-tete. The only thing you can do now is just drop missiles, indiscriminately on our apartments. Russians can't win anything. They can just terrorize. And Putin knows it. Or at least if he doesn't know it, he feels it. Like, why aren't we winning? It's technology. It's the technology. It's leverage. So again, it gets back to us and how we get some type of leverage somehow. And this is where I don't know that it's a dirty pool. I don't believe that that's going to be the way to do it. But I think that somehow the Democratic Party is going to have to get some leverage, and it's going to need help. Good to see you, Sandy. Good to see you. So you have to have leverage just like you would on Putin. And that's tough. It's really, really tough. And like I say, I don't know how it's going to be done. I don't know. What I do know is this, is what I keep saying, is that democracy in this country is fading. And it seems to be fading around the world. You see it in Hungary, and even in Poland, it's getting, they're big on Trump there. And the countries where we have liberal governments like Germany, France, and to some extent England, that's about what you have. And Canada. So, yeah, I'm not feeling very good about this. And again, I'm going into my negative tirades again. And Sandy, I did discuss the environmental impact with Russia early in the show. You might want to check that out. But Trump has had Putin as an oligarch, a fossil fuel oligarch, has done a lot of destruction, eco-destruction, agribusiness destruction. And I think that there has to be a concentrated effort within the environmental movement to attack Putin. Young people. Yeah, I could personify it. I forget the movie, was it Night of the Hunter? Was it Robert Mitchum? And he plays this diabolical guy, and this young kid, he has to deal with this son of a bitch all the time. And he says, doesn't he sleep? Doesn't he ever sleep? I remember that line. Doesn't he ever sleep? Because he was a force of evil. And the kid says, how does this guy keep going? And you're right, Veg. I'm going to post that. The forces of repression, regression, either one, repression or regression, they do never sleep. And it just goes to show you, even after the victory in the Senate, and to some extent the better showing in Congress than we expected, they seem to keep coming back at this. They get crazier and crazier. And then, again, as I said, as I started out the show, you have the Supreme Court, and I'm afraid to say, you've got some religious lunatics on there. I mean, I fear most Gorsuch, and Alito, of course, too, but they're all from the Federalist Society, so they're a problem. But I don't like Gorsuch because I think he'll defend Trump every single time. So when we have these cases come up, especially with the state legislatures, then we can lose it all. Because where do you go from there? And there are people, remember Dave used to say, we could maybe have Biden appoint more people to the Supreme Court, but how do you get that done? You have to get enough senators behind it. So we're stuck with the Supreme Court. And they're there. And I look at the Supreme Court, and I look at their ages, and I'm older than most of them, or some of them. So I'll never see it. They appointed these younger people like Kavanaugh and Barrett. I think Gorsuch is younger than I am. I'm not going to outlive them. So what do I have to look forward to? I mean, I'm going to fight the fight, but if I'm rational and observe the situation, I would think that I ain't going to get no satisfaction. Veg. Could Garland finally indict? You'd think. Because it's kind of obvious what the man did. I mean, just alone on Mar-a-Lago documents. The classified documents, I should say. That's enough. Get him. Now, would somehow the Supreme Court protect him? I don't know. It's like a bad dream. That's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's like a bad dream. But that's a good question. You keep saying, well, what are you waiting for? Now, this guy that they have is not the master, but whoever's appointed by Garland, Jack, whatever his name is. Yeah, he might be better than Garland. But Trump has just gotten away with it left and right. And in general, I mean, I'm still pissed that Steve Bannon isn't in jail. He should be in prison. But that judge basically gave him an out. Let him appeal and just hang out. How long is it going to be? 4 years? And in January, the Republicans take over. Yeah. Yes, indeed. So, I want to sum everything up tonight. This week, again, we've had problems with essentially the Supreme Court. Kagan, I think, has sent us the warning. We had the Brittany Griner situation, which Putin is using, and Trump, in a way, Donald Trump Jr. is going to be using to attack the Democrats being too weak. And a larger problem with this eco-terrorism from these oligarchs, and mainly Putin. And he's getting away with it. He's getting away with it. And again, from a personal note, one can only hope that Dave's going to get better. And I have not heard from him in about 4 months. And it's been 6 months. And we need him. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. No, it's not a long show, but I think it's best that I keep it to around an hour. And I appreciate everybody for coming tonight. Again, if you're new to the channel and you like what you hear, you like having conversations with those in the chat room, please subscribe. And if you're not aware of our Facebook group page, we invite you to join. Again, we do have some rules. We are partisan, so we won't take attacks on the Democratic Party. And we will have no Trumpers as part of our group. That is on Facebook. It's called Divided We Stand. So again, I want to thank everybody. And I'll finish by saying, if you like this, please check out Vegematic Deluxe. And Environmental Coffee House. And we'll see you next week. Touch wood. See everybody. Thanks, Kim. Sorry about the microphone. Could have done better. Peace and love. Thank you.